Hey, That's the Thing, Accent Core, episode .065. Today is Friday the 18th, and it's just me for now. Maybe someone will join, but who knows? I mean, I'm just going to probably talk for like 10, 15 minutes. If no one shows up, then it's a short old episode. Anyway, we have important news to discuss. Primarily, because no one else is here, we get to talk about the most important things, such as Magic the Gathering Arena, alchemy cards revealed. That's right. We're going to be looking into it. Seeing, what's up. There's probably going to be some more cards revealed on whatever, because that's just kind of what it goes. These are the ones that are out now. I mean, our first one, we got ourselves Dragonfly Pilot. It's a 1 white mana creature fox pilot 1/1. Whenever it enters the battlefield, basically get a card named Dragonfly Suit to your hand, and the pilot can crew things as if its power were 2 greater. And Dragonfly Suit is just a 3 mana 3/2 vehicle with flying and crew 1. It seems decent if you want to try to go for like a vehicle aggro deck, which I don't know if it's good or not. I'm not quite sure. I think vehicles a little too slow, a little too underwhelming compared to just with alchemy. Like, you have other stuff going on. And the biggest problem in alchemy that I've found is the Divine Purge card. I'm just pulling it up, making sure I got it right. It's the 1 white exile all artifacts and creatures that are 3 mana less. That's really a problem when you're running a low to the ground deck. And I just feel, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be janky, but it's probably okay if you're running artifacts. I almost think that it'd be better if it was not like they like to do in the alchemy with the Hearthstone-y kind of cards that are like making random cards to your hand and deck. And I don't think it works quite well in Magic, just because you can go out of the way. I do like it in some aspects. Like, I like the witch that allows you to draft different cards. Lets you play with some kind of lesser cards and see them, like, just because it's free, quote unquote free value. That thing I do like, and it gives chances to stuff. So I guess, talking out, I kind of do like conjuring random cards, and I think that in low power or lower rarities or like more free to play, it was always fun. I liked in Hearthstone, I would always like building decks where you could just like steal cards and clone cards, because it always felt like, hey, I get to play with cards I don't normally have. That was before I kind of quite understood card advantage. There's a Hearthstone card that would put like 5 random legendaries into your deck, which is very bad. That's not a good card at all. You don't want that, because it just dilutes your consistency in a deck. Which in most card games, you want to keep it down. You want to keep your deck as low as possible. But anyway, let's keep moving. We have Kami of Bamboo Groves, enchantment spirit creature, 1 green mana. Whenever it enters the battlefield, put a land from your hand onto the battlefield tab. That's all Arboreal Grazer. It was a good card, but this one has a channel where you can discard it to get 2 basic for 3 mana to get 2 forced into your hand. Which, this seems like it could be a card in some kind of landfall deck. One of the weaknesses of the landfall decks is you got to be putting in a ton of lands into your deck. So sometimes you have bad draws because you're going a little bit too high on lands. Whereas Kami of Bamboo Groves gives you lands for free, quote unquote. I mean, you gotta pay for it, but like, you know, paying 3 to draw 2 lands from nowhere. If you are running a bunch of landfall triggered creatures, could be good. Could be good. I don't know if it's good now, but it might be good. It's one to look at. I would definitely, if I am running for some reason like a green blue ramp deck, this thing completely power creeps our Boyle Grazier in like every way, because it actually has purpose, has alternate uses. Doesn't have that little reach, which I don't know. Our next one, better offer, sorcery, X and a blue. Put a random creature card with mana value X or less from target opponent's library onto the battlefield under your control. It perpetually has power toughness XX. Perpetually gains word 1. I think this card is bad. It's fun. And I think in some decks this is going to be really sick. Especially if you're getting something like a control deck that doesn't have very many creatures and you can kind of target what you're getting. But I think against like an aggro deck, it's not great. I mean, the only example is if you are doing like a blue-green ramp deck and just shoving like this as like 10 mana and then getting a 10/10 with something on it could be good. I mean, that's generally like not bad. But at that point, I think you could be doing better. I mean, extra turn spells are like 7 mana. And doubling an extra turn spell is like, I don't know, 9 mana. So like, why would you be doing this? I don't think better offer is very good. It's silly, but I just don't think it's very good. Unless they're doing some kind of very, very specific thing. And you want to like... Now, if it was to take... Okay, so it just says, put a random creature card from target opponent's library under the battlefield under your control. I'm assuming it takes it out of their deck. If it's stealing the card, then I think it might be better. Because then it's a little bit more sideboardy. If they're running like the one of those decks with the wizard guy who allows you to just like steal things. There's a couple like decks out there where they only have like 3 creatures, or like, and if stealing one of them might be like the end. So better offer, I think, is very, very edge case. Next one is Kami of Mourning, 2 generic and a black. Whenever it's a creature spirit 3/2. Whenever Kami Mourning enters the battlefield, target creature you control or target creature in your graveyard perpetually gains. Whenever a creature you control with greater value than this card dies, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is good card. Kami of Mourning is super good. And the keyword, or what makes it good, is the perpetually. So the perpetually is one of their online arena mechanics that basically just says whenever something when it's on that card forever for the game. So what this sucker's doing is it's basically saying if you sacrifice something with mana greater than it, it just comes back for free. And this seems very good in any sacrifice deck. Like you put it on that 1 mana, wherever it dies, you get something from it. And every time anything greater, like a 2 mana creature dies or whatever, it just comes back. I think even stuff like putting this on a Kroxa, which is the 2 mana giant that just can keep popping back to the battlefield, sacrifice itself, discard a card, and then it also dies. Like you can chain stuff with this card. This is a good card. It's in a very specific deck, but I feel like there's enough good 1-drops in there that you can sacrifice for free, or like you're going to want to be targeting a 1 or a 2-drop on this. So basically, you're in sacrifice colors. I feel like you're really wanting to have a. You're gonna put this effect on the witch, or you're gonna put it on Croxa, the Titan of Death's Hunger. I feel like that's what you're gonna want with this friend. You can even just put it on a cat, like that 1-mana cat. Just every time it comes into play, it pings your opponent for 1. You could also like, oh man, there's a lot. Like the ghoul, the zombie. Whenever it dies, it just gives you a treasure token. Like that's just good. I think this card is great because the floor is strong. Like the worst case is you put it on a 1-drop and it just comes back to the field whenever something drops. And it also is kind of like board wipe protection too, because if they kill all creatures, like you will be getting something back. Especially if you play like more than one of these. I mean, ideally, you want to do some shenanigans where you get Kami of Mourning, targeting a Kami of Mourning, and then they have like a 4-drop dies, and then this comes back, and then it gives something else, and then like they can loop. There's something where you can do with that, especially with the. I think I can see an infinite with this and the dragon, the Kanigawa dragon. I think it's the. Kamigawa Red Dragon. I forget it. Oopsie daisy. Okay, Ashizu the Blazing Sky, where it's 4 mana, 2 and 2 red, and whenever it dies, it creates 3 treasure tokens. So there's some loop with that, like maybe with Zorn, where you can just kind of keep looping that thing over and over. Like you kill it, and then it summons something, and then you comes back, and then you just kill it, and it keeps coming back. And I think there's some loop there. Anyway, good card. We have a next one, Forceful Cultivator. Snatch. It's a snack shaman. It's a 2 and 2 green, 2/3 snake shaman. The spell costs 2 less to cast if there are no lands in your hands. When Forceful Cultivator enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card, put that field onto the battlefield, tap and shuffle. This also seems kind of like a landfall support. Like one of your problems with landfall is if you don't have mana. And this is going to basically get you a mana. If you're in that kind of deck, you're fine with paying 4 mana for it. It's also a shaman, which can matter because there is shaman tribal that just doubles it. I think it's a much more limiting card. This one basically kind of tells you what you're gonna do. I think the spell costs 2 less if there are no land cards in your hand is very situational. It does happen in landfall kind of decks where you're going to be casting this for 2 just because you've dumped so many lands on the field that there's nothing left. Like I've had that happen, but I don't know. I just kind of get a to it. I think it's like a decent card. I think it's you're going to be fine playing it, but I don't think it's going to be like the be all end all, which means it'll probably be good. Like if my Magic the Gathering sense, if I look at a card and think it's or not very good, that's probably because it's great. Like my rough assumptions are always like, I don't know, or if it's bad, then it's good. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind for this. And our last one is Moth Rider or Cavalry. It's a 2 mana. It's 4 mana, 2 and 2 white. It seems like there's going to be a cycle of 2 mana, like 4 mana cards with 2 generic and 2 colored mana. That say this spell costs 2 less to cast if you have no other creature cards in hand, or if the only creature cards in your hand are named Moth Rider Cavalry. It's flying, and other creatures gain +1/+1. This is an interesting card. I feel like Moth Rider Cavalry, what it's telling you to do is it wants you to say like, hey, put out all your creatures and then play this for cheap. I think playing this at 4 is okay, but my brain instantly goes to token decks because you're making spells that do tokens. And then if you do, if basically the only creatures in your deck are Mothrider Cavalry, then this sucker's a 2-mana 2/2 flyer that gives an Anthem. And there's a lot of tokens stuff in white. Like, that's where I would go with Mothrider Cavalry. I don't know if in Alchemy specific there's enough to do it, but I know in Historic there's some token decks that are people were trying to get working. With, like, you do tokens and then Chaos Warp or something. And to me, this thing just kind of goes in there. Because you're just... Well, I don't know. I don't think it goes in, like, the Chaos Warp tokens. Because you don't want to, like, Chaos Warp a token and get this thing out. You really want to be getting out, like, a 10 mana or, like, a big old card. Don't think this one's the greatest one to do. But I think it's okay in white aggro. But I feel like you want to build your deck in a specific way. Because if your hand is empty, I feel like paying 4 mana is not that big a deal in an aggro deck. I've done it before. Done it many times. I mean, that was what you would do in the old red aggro deck when you'd have a Torbrand, the 4 mana dwarf. Sometimes you just play them on 4. It's fine. I feel like this is fine on 4 mana, and you shouldn't try to plan for it on 2 unless you're building your deck around it. But yeah, that's that. So that's Magic card time. What else has been going on? So I get to talk about this now because it's just me. So we get to talk about what I want to talk about. And that is the ending cinematic to World of Warcraft Shadowlands has come out. And it's a big stinky. It is not very good. You get to find out that Zoval the Jailer, a blue man, kind of looks like a vampire. And then his armor kind of looks like the Lich King with skulls on it. And then there's like, the front is broke. It's just like, Zoval's so stupid. And they put him in Shadowlands to be behind literally every aspect of World of Warcraft. And that kind of puts a real damper on things. Because it was so, like, so bad. Because he didn't really do anything. He just kind of stood around menacingly. And I think he had like 36 lines of dialogue in total. And some of them were such things as interesting and Mossworn. Get them. And it's just kind of disappointing. Not that World of Warcraft really has ever had an amazing story. But it's had like decent story. It's had... It can do... Here's the bad man, attack the bad man. That's like 90% of Warcraft if you think about it. Like even in like the classic WoW, it's here's the bad fire elemental, go get him. Here's the demon man, go get him. Here's the zombie man, go get him. Here's the big dragon, go get him. Pandaria was a little different. I kind of like Pandaria. I like the idea of just this idyllic panda land, and it just completely ruined in like 2 months, in like a week, because the Alliance and Horde showed up and they just ruined it with their stupid war. I liked that a lot. And then you had Draenor, which is really dumb. Had a lot of potential, but just didn't quite work. And then Legion was good. But anyway, back to the cinematic. So what happens is when you fight Zoval the Jailer, he stands there and he goes, I've done this forever. My plan is to fruition. And then we cut to like underneath a dungeon in Wrath of the Lich King, where like it starts spooling up to suck out Azeroth power juice, and then it shoots it up into the sky. Which to me completely disproves the Jailer was just trying... Like, there's a theory where he was trying to be, he's just opportunistic and he keeps trying out things, which I think is a good idea and would have made him more captivating. But no, because the idea that he had like a power sucking facility built under the Lich King's tower is very much his million IQ plan, which makes him suck. Because it's just kind of like, it's not even like a good million IQ plan. They just keep telling you he's smart and cunning, and he's never said or done anything. Like, so then the heroes kill him instantly, as you would. The raid happens, and then at the end, he has a flashback where they finally ask the jailer, "Why did you want to destroy all of creation?" And he looks, and he says, "Because the bad man is coming," and then he dies. So the whole story was there's a new bad man, and he will show up in the next expansion, or probably like the next expansion. Oh, I mean, okay, so he'll be hinted in the next expansion, and then he'll show up in the one after that, and then we'll kill him, and then we'll go to space, and then we'll fight Jailer 2. I don't know, man. Like, it's just so disappointing. Like, it's I want to like World of Warcraft, and I can't play it because I feel like the systems are all bad. That's a key aspect to it. Like, I tried watching the World First race or whatever, and I couldn't tell what was going on. And even more so than normal MMO, you can't tell what's going on. It was just like even like the abilities and stuff was just like a fever dream. There's too much crap happening. Even like I've played the Final Fantasy, you could generally tell what's happening in a raid. You can tell, like, okay, here it's gonna make like a ball of energy that's attached to you, run away from it, or don't look at the boss, it puts a big old eyeball on it, that means don't look at it. Or here's like the colored cone that's orange, get out of it. Whereas in WoW it's just like nonsense, because it feels like there's no universal language, and bosses will just start casting mechanics on you, and they won't really say or do it, and it's just kind of like random, and you got to know if you've been targeted. Like, that's also a thing Final Fantasy does, is when you're targeting something, usually it'll put something really big on you. WoW, it doesn't like doing that, or maybe it does in some of them, but it just feels like the game is just nonsense. And there's a lot of nonsense in there. Not even the good kind of nonsense. Just kind of bad. It's just disappointing. But yeah, they did an announcement where in April 19th, we'll discover the next expansion. Everyone thinks it's going to be the Dragon Isles, which is the Dragon expansion. Because let me tell you, whenever morale is at an all-time low, you hit the dragon button, and people perk up their ears and they go, "Ooh, dragons." And World of Warcraft has some pretty good dragons. A lot of the dragons in World of Warcraft are pretty good. I like Rathian. He's just a jerk. That's the good kind of dragon. I mean, you had like Onyxia. She was good because she was a jerk. I mean, is it Nefarian? Who just saying his name makes you seem like, okay, I see there. See what you did there with Nefarian. But I like Nefarian. Hanging out in Blackrock Spire. Just kind of chilling in human form. And Chromie's good. The Infinite Dragon. I mean, they're just, dragons are okay. I think most dragons are fine. I mean, Ysera showed up in Shadowlands to do nothing. Like most characters in Shadowlands. That's Shadowlands, like one of the problems. There's just a lot of like missed potential. I feel like they threw every character into that expansion from a narrative perspective, but they only had enough things for like 3 of them to do. So then you get a bunch of people just like standing around. Like Bane Bloodhoof the Tauren just kind of sat in a corner for most of the expansion. It's like, maybe you just shouldn't have had him there. Because pretty much the characters that had major things to do were, I mean, it was Anduin, Sylvanas. Tyrande, she did some stuff. And I'd say that's like it. And I don't count like Thrall and Jaina helping out during like the raid when they made like ice bridges or whatever. Like that doesn't count. That doesn't count. They were just kind of, that was like mechanically they were there. But they didn't really need to be there. You could have had like the Arden Weald people make like a branch. Or like the Maldraxxus people made like a bone bridge or whatever. Like that's like, they didn't need to be there. You could have had like 3 characters. Basically what you should have had is you should have actually given the jailer a character. You could have had Sylvanas, Anduin, and then you had Tyrande, because they wanted to do the thing with like Tyrande forgiving Sylvanas or moving on, because then you could have had Sylvanas had to move on from Arthas, and then you could even had like Jailer have a redemption arc, maybe him be like the one where he couldn't let it go, and that's what led him to destruction or whatever. That would have been more compelling than what happened where everyone is really, really smart until they're not. That happens a lot in World of Warcraft. It doesn't really happen in good stories unless they're funny. And that's also the thing. Like, it's not even like funny dumb. Like the goblin stuff was dumb. Like the goblin starting zone is very dumb, but I enjoy it. Because it's like you're riding around in like your car, and then you're having to like become vice president of the mining corporation, and then you get like bought out immediately. And then you're just like, well, easy come, easy go. It just kind of keeps going. Like that's fun. That's just stupid. I enjoy it. I like the Moonberry stuff. That was just stupid. I kind of want Warcraft to be good again. I mean, Final Fantasy's alright. New patches, I think, next month, and they're adding a bunch of stuff, and that'll be fun. But I don't feel the need to like hang out in Final Fantasy. It's just it's something about like the art style of it just doesn't really hit me as a no, I just want to hang out here kind of game. It's not bad. I think it looks pretty good and it tells its story. I would say it's sort of like, because it's that kind of like Final Fantasy realistic style or whatever, which is it's good for telling its story. It has some good set pieces and good armor, but I don't feel like hanging out there. Just, I guess that makes sense. Even if it doesn't, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Final Fantasy's good. Lost Ark still continues. I don't know. That game just doesn't seem to end. Like, I know the bad part will happen, but apparently I'm like an island away from it. And that's kind of put a damper on things, because I like max level in that game, and it's like, nah, you still got like 3 story quests to go. I'm like, okay. Because I'm also playing Elden Ring, and that game also never ends. I got the Goku laser. It's good. Kills bosses. My big advice is set on Twitter. You get an ice spell. Like, against, because there's like those guys with the rapier, and they're in their like their god skin, the fat guys that roll around. Get an ice spell for them, because they resist magic, but they do not resist frost, which is very, very convenient. Yeah, so like have damage types. It's pretty nice. What else? What else can I talk about? There's the state of play. I'll probably go more into that, other than I think the big news is this bunch of JRPGs, and then Dinosaur Anthem. Dino Crisis meets Anthem. The game looks weird. I will not play it. I'm just, like, even as someone who's into MMOs and stuff, I'm just not into, like, the Destiny MMO. I don't know. It just doesn't hit me. I think I just want my MMOs to be like 40% social and then 60% stuff to do when people are not online. Which is like, I guess if that's the real reason why I don't play like Final Fantasy as much, because I did the content and then I don't want to hang out in the world. Whereas like when I was doing WoW and like chilling with the guild and stuff, I would like to just, all right, here's doing the dungeons and whatever. And then when everyone's online, gonna have our own role play adventure. And that was fun. I enjoyed that. It's different than D&D, which is it's a little bit intimate. Not that kind of intimate. But there's a difference between like, okay, we gotta like plan and get everything going, instead of like, okay, you did your quest and there's like 4 people kind of hanging out online, and then you just do something for like 30 minutes and then you move on. Like that's a interesting little atmosphere that a lot of games don't give you. Closest thing to it, I would say, is like Space Station 13. That's the closest thing, where you kind of have like, you go to this place with some strangers and some weird stuff's gonna happen, but most people are gonna, not in character, but just like taking it somewhat seriously, where they're not gonna be like just talking about whatever's on TV. They're going to try to be like, we are on the space station, and then shenanigans are afoot. Like that's the closest thing I would describe to how World of Warcraft RP was. That's not in like the Goldshire Inn. That's its own thing. That's its own thing for its own crowd. No shame on you if you're hanging out in Goldshire Inn. You do you. But I'm just saying, that's its own thing. Watch that get this like flagged or whatever. Drew put Punk Hazard for some reason. I think he's rewatching One Piece or rereading it. Punk Hazard's pretty cool. You got the Fire Island and the Ice Island. We'll probably have more to say about it. Other than like it sets up Wano stuff, which I think is like probably the most interesting thing about it. We actually get to see like, hey, check out the samurai. He's gonna actually come in them. It's like, oh, that's nice. You know what? It's nice to see a story that has setups and then payoffs, instead of World of Warcraft where there's neither. Well, I mean, it's you get the best comic book writing out there, where it's like written by telephone and someone just starts writing. So you get the sigils, which were super important for one patch and then forgotten. I still am baffled by the sigils, which were needed to open the door or whatever, and the most important things that were never talked about before or since. It'd be like at the Infinity Stones, were like 30 minutes of a movie and then never again. Like, just they're gone. Weren't set up. They were literal MacGuffins, and then they were used, and then they're gone. But not even discussed, like completely gone. No one talks about like, oh, we did the sigils, or like we needed them. No, they're just there. You just need them to open up the whatever. Zereth Mortis. I mean, we all know. Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here before I end this. Like, the greater evil or whatever that Jailer talked about is clearly that the first ones who created the universe or whatever made a D-Reaper from Digimon Season 3, and that D-Reaper is the Devourers who show up in Shadowlands, who are designed to like eat up everything and basically wipe the slate clean. And Jailer can see him, and he was like, the big Devourer Tyrannid D-Reaper is coming, and we gotta fight it. But you didn't listen to me. I didn't even tell you what it was either. Keep that in mind. He never said, like, what is actually coming. I mean, obviously, because the writers have no idea. But, like, at any point to anyone, did Jailer ever say that he was doing all this to save, like, reality? because then that would have made him somewhat sympathetic instead of just, apparently as he is now, stupid. But anyway, we know that's going to be the next threat in WoW. Whenever they're gonna, it's going to be like super. There'll be like a first one guy, and he'll be corrupted, and he'll be like, "No, the Devourers are showing up," and then the Tyranid Eldrazi Devourers will show up and be like, "Time to eat. I'm hungry," and then there be the very hungry Devourers. That seems like something generic fantasy enough for World of Warcraft. It's not smart enough to do something else. But that's it. Thanks for listening to me talk for a bit. Hope you have a good one. Bye.